we're on a turbo session, so let's keep it moving quick. I think we have a sizzle that we're going to run from you about BuzzFeed Entertainment, so let's see if we can get...
BuzzFeed Motion Pictures.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, if I could just have one moment of your time.
No, yes, exactly. It's ridiculous. It's just, it's her. Shut up.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
What about this one, the Yankees cap? Banged it.
You were really funny.
Halloween is the one night a year when a guy can dress like a total slut and no other guys can say anything about it.
Voila!
Makeup is gendered. I think beauty is gendered.
Once someone else has done your makeup and someone else has done your hair and someone's directed the way your body looks and then taken away your imperfections, then there's not much left of who you really are.
Victoria was sent to prison after her boyfriend killed her 3-year-old daughter.
When he picked her up by her throat.
The more I heard, the more I was convinced that she needed to be out.
And then I would break up, and then she would start seeing Lauren.
I'm a guy. I don't want to be a guy. I just am a guy.
Ashley.
That is a Cole's penis.
What?
This is the best chicken I've ever had.
Is this a banana?
Well, that's really good.
Great. I'm glad that you guys included some of the more visceral, emotive, serious content that you guys are doing, because I think there's a perception that BuzzFeed is all laughs and listicles and non-serious content. But it's good to see that you guys are moving strong in that direction, and I think that's what you'll be doing with BuzzFeed Motion Pictures. So how do you guys really translate out of the perception of short form and maybe sillier content into something that's more like traditional Hollywood or the future of digital Hollywood?
Well, I mean, the first thing is that I don't really believe in this notion of graduation. It's not like the short form business exists to graduate to something else. Another thing I would just say is that, just to sort of back up a second into the reality of what we do, is we make lots of content, right? We've made over 3,000 videos in the last 2 years. We make about 50 a week right now. We're at about 1 billion views a month. And that's all content that we created in-house. And when you have that volume of content, there's all sorts of genres and styles, and we have a kind of autonomous model where producers are really able to lean into the content that means something to them. Now, the reality is that when you're in a time that is dominated by social distribution, the stuff that spreads to you is the stuff that you're going to define the brand by. So if your friends are sharing a lot of silly stuff with you, that's how you're going to think of BuzzFeed's content. And I think about when it's BuzzFeed.com, which is the sort of parent organization over BuzzFeed Motion Pictures, has an amazing journalism team, and they have amazing reporting and all this stuff. And I remember Ben went down to the correspondence dinner at the White House, and somebody came up to him and was like, "Hey, oh, you were at BuzzFeed. You guys make videos, right?" And so it's this constant sort of interesting aspect of modern production, which is dominated by social distribution, that your brand has many, many different definitions depending on what the consumption habits are. So anyways, that's sort of talking broadly about it. But I think that we recognize, especially being in Hollywood, that there is an entire craft base that isn't really about social distribution. Social distribution and the short form that we make really leans into this idea that content has different usages, and one thing that people are doing with content is they're using it as conversation. So we think a lot about how to make content specifically for the social streams, content that you can use to reach out to someone and say, hey, this is me, or hey, this made me think of you, blah, blah, blah. But on the other side, and this is the world that Michael has been a major force in, you have, I mean, you produced all the movies that I love. It has to do more with this affinity to character and stories and losing yourself into stories and you know, that kind of psychological engagement, which is outside of social conversations and things like that. And so with that in mind, you know, bringing Michael in to help us think about the ways that our short form business can be of value to the creation of, you might call it traditional or story-based or character-based content, has become like a pretty big focus for us. Do you have you want to say something?
Yeah.
You can. We both have mics.
Permission to speak, sir.
The great thing about BuzzFeed is there's no R&D system in Hollywood. No studio makes a movie to see if they want to make a better version of the movie. They don't even make a short section of a movie to see if they want to make a longer movie. Even though the movie Whiplash actually started at the Sundance Film Festival as a short, they then used that to get the money to make a feature, and both versions of it won Sundance. But the studios don't have the capacity to innovate at all because the amount of capital is so large and they move so slowly. Now, in the television ecosystem, there's of course the pilot system. For every 100 scripts that are written, 10 get made, one gets picked up. BuzzFeed's a big R&D lab. If you do a 2-minute short form video and the content's interesting, you do more on that content. If the characters are interesting, you do more on that characters. So we come into it from a content point of view, saying, what in the BuzzFeed universe of content is really engaging an audience and why? And then how could you scale that out to a narrative that's, say, 22 minutes for a television show or 100 minutes for a movie? And that's where in the initial steps of that, because ultimately we're all selling feelings. All I've ever done with my career in success is you've made people feel, hopefully in a fresh way. And the genius of the BuzzFeed system, it's all based on feeling. It's almost an anomaly, which is people think, oh, the internet's all about digital data, but really BuzzFeed's all about feeling for the very reason that Zay said. Why do you want to share something? What's the emotional gift? So we've got this feeling laboratory, this character laboratory, that if we can scale it out to stories, and we are doing that, and I think it'll be successful, it's a whole fresh way to approach the system in terms of coming up with content. Contiguous with that is the idea of distribution. One of the problems in the television system is, rather in film, is that it costs sometimes. I have a movie coming out in the fall. It's a really great movie. It's a true story with Julianne Moore, Ellen Page, Michael Shannon, and Steve Carell. It's about a female cop, and she's dying. She wants to leave her pension to her girlfriend. The politicians won't let her. So it's a gay rights story. The movie costs $7 million. The studio will have to spend at least $20 million to market it. So contiguous with new content is what's the new distribution system. For example, BuzzFeed has this enormous reach of, as you say, of like 200 million regular users around the world on a constant basis. Is there some way we can, with our content, lean into, hey, we can put a little short on, hey, we're doing a movie, and all of a sudden by the time we hit to the starting line, we've already got an audience that we can aggregate to see a movie at a fraction of the cost, or maybe we distribute it partly online and partly in the theaters. So it's a new way of generating content. It's a new cost structure, and I think the content also has to be fresh. Nobody's looking to us to do what everybody else is doing,
right.
And I think that's the road that's exciting.
You bring up one interesting thing that I don't want us to move away from too quickly is this idea of distribution and then the cost structure. So if you're building something that has done inherently well, or you're maybe taking an article from BuzzFeed that did inherently well and you're going to translate that into a longer format, how are you guys looking at basing the cost structure? I mean, obviously you can't speak directly to price points, but I mean, how do you actually price point out a feature film that you're producing when you have that audience already baked in and you have a distribution arm and you have opportunity like that already?
I mean, there's the
solidified.
cost structure, which I don't know if we can speak to too much. I mean, there's, you know, obviously there's so many different ways to finance a film, and there's so many different ways also to think about distribution, both nationally and then internationally. But you know, the one area that I would really focus on is what Michael was talking about a little, is mitigating some of the risk through the development process itself, and you know, using that to create cost models that are probably more reasonable after time. And I just want to like put a couple points into what Michael said. The first is the 200 million unique visitors is to BuzzFeed.com, and BuzzFeed Motion Pictures has you know, 1 billion views a month. In addition to that, basically, there isn't very much overlap between those. You know, just to give a discrete example, when we talk about the kind of development opportunities, right? We have about 200 people in the studio, and we can do shorts to test casting, for example, just to see, can they handle dialogue? Can they handle arguments? We build sets in our studio, which allows us to test locations and test the ability of our directors to film in those locations. So those are some like very discrete ways. And our scripted lab, which Michael works with extensively, is constantly thinking about that in a sort of character-first way in the development of this stuff. I don't know, you can speak to the cost stuff. We've been talking about that for like 3 weeks now.
Well, part of it is you pick subject matter that's cheaper to produce. If you blow a lot of stuff up, it's a more expensive film. But if you're doing character-based drama or character-based comedy in particular, then those are the lower cost films that you can do. So that's one way of keeping the cost down.
I'm also referring specifically to how you distribute. Are you looking at that free? Are you looking at a transactional VOD? Are you looking at it maybe a certain price point to have early access? I mean, that's a lot of what's happening right now, is like the windowing and price pointing around that.
So one thing for us is that, you know, when we think about why we make content and why we create joint ventures and why, you know, why we ultimately would align with a platform for distribution, there's basically 3 things that can come back. One is money, another is data, and then the third is strategic relationships, right? And ideally we want all 3. And the great thing about our model is that we're able to scale our development business in a way that we don't lose money. So hits are gravy. We're not dependent on hits to get this stuff moving, right? Which means that we have a lot of flexibility in testing out the future of distribution itself. And so I think everything's on the table, from the idea of free to the idea of windowed exclusive to the idea of, you know, I don't know, we could give our feature to the box office, let them keep 100% of the profit and think about it as a marketing vehicle, back to, you know, these sort of you hate that idea, but you know, back to a character universe that was growing and that was yielding more IP, for example.
I mean, I would say I come from a hit-driven business, and let me back up. I think for all the talk about data and platforms and this and that, it's all about having something to say and finding an original story to tell. And the movies I've had that are hits are always commercial, but a little bit ahead of the marketplace. So the excitement is to really be nurturing to the creative community and come up with stories and characters you want to see. And then what I think is I think sooner rather than later, we'll come up with something distinctive enough, and you'll call it a hit, whatever that definition is. Because as television breaks down somewhat in the States, the television ecosystem in the United States is $100 billion a year, of which $60 billion goes into the cable systems and the networks, and 40 billion comes back to the content creators, okay? And that supports some risk-taking. We think of commercial television as not being risk-taking, but to some degree it is. And if there's a lot of money, you can take more risk. But if people are unbundled now, is the conventional system going to take as much risk? And we're in a risk-welcoming system here. And out of that, I think, you know, there'll be a franchise of some sort of hero or detective. There'll be some drama series that people want to see more of. So that's what excites me as a filmmaker. I'm excited by, hey, we can really do interesting stuff here. It's not just about the data.
So I'm going to sort of come at you with a little bit of a counter and seeing how you're educating around the content you guys are creating, because you do speak a lot about data in how you educate some of the content that you're creating and how you look at social lift and why people share. So do you think or does your data show that people are inherently drawn to the short form value of the content? And if so, do you think there will be an education curve for you guys when you start distributing more long form content? Like, will they expect that to be coming from you?
I think they cohabitate. They're both really important, and I don't think it's about any kind of education, because it's going on right now. People are choosing to spend a lot of time in the social stream, and they're consuming tons of short form content, and some of it they're not even listening to the sound, but at the same time, you know, they're perfectly comfortable watching long form content. I don't think that there's any education that needs to happen. You know, they serve very different purposes, but they can also be they can be mutually beneficial to each other, right? I mean, one thing that we think about as a company is that we really want to lean into where the people are, and putting things behind paywalls and making it hard to access and all that kind of stuff. You know, there are some cases to be made for looking at that as a business model, but overall, the fact that short form content can exist in all these different places, can move in such a frictionless way around the web, that's amazing opportunities to build affinity with shows, with characters, and then that affinity, you know, it will translate over to larger stuff. Will it translate at the same scale? Probably not, right? I mean, that's going to be part of the equation, is figuring out what that, you know, what that blend is.
Well, I think that, look, everybody's watching long form. It's called Netflix, it's called Hulu, okay? So in, like, my teenage daughter, she'll binge view a television series and stuff like that. Now, that stuff tends to come pre-promoted through a network promotion, a network window, or an ad buy for a movie. But it's what I would term location and duration. Where am I? How much time do I have? Well, if I'm at home and I've got an hour, I'll watch a movie. So Hollywood's already, the long-form narrative is already part of the DNA of the digital experience. It's just, can you create it internally and then scale it out? And, you know, look what Netflix did with House of Cards, which essentially branded Netflix. They got David Fincher, so they got a movie guy, okay? And they did a big non-digital campaign to get you to watch it, okay? So what Zay says is exactly right. Everything is already here now, and we're just we're going to migrate from what BuzzFeed does to the system that's already there. But we just need to bring something fresh to it.
And I want to clarify a little bit about how we use data and why we use data. We don't use data at the sort of command and control level. We don't, you know, have a packet of data that arrives on my desk and then I'm like, oh, we got to do something about, you know, I'm not even going to, water, because I saw water down there. Rather, what we do is we create data environments so that all of our producers and all of our, you know, creative people can constantly look at their work and ask questions about why it's failing or succeeding. So really what the data is helping us do is not answer questions like, do people like short form versus long form, but rather, what are some of the unexplored categories of emotional content around or identity-based content that have, you know, traditionally been underserved in media and represent a massive opportunity. And I even, you know, to the point of things like, I mean, we're definitely finding that, like, shyness and introversion and, you know, people whose definition of a party is not, you know, drinking kegs of beer, but rather sitting around drinking Sprite and playing board games. Like, these are real identities that have a lot of power in them, and that's sort of how I think about it, is that we're using data to refine a lens on culture to identify new, you know, topic buckets or genre buckets that you know, can yield a lot of interest and affinity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would add to, I mean, data is not quantitative, it's qualitative. If you know why people like something, that's more valuable than how many people like it. And
data by nature is quantitative, but that's all right. Fine point. We're going to argue about it later over some rosé.
It's semantic. Just I don't have a comeback. Let's just move on.
Those jet lags. So.
So how are you guys looking at the breakdown of scripted versus unscripted as you approach your BuzzFeed Motion Pictures strategy? Is it split down the middle? Do you think you'll develop more like docuseries, maybe more unscripted, or are you guys leaning more towards feature film, longer scripted?
I mean, we're super interested in both. You know, Michael and I approach this from kind of different angles. I'm constantly, you know, one thing that I think about a lot is how do you lean into the modern realities or the sort of modern shifts? And I think about three major categories. One being talent has changed quite a bit, like the talent that is flowing into the city where we have a studio. They're young, they're used to publishing a lot of content, getting feedback, understanding what's going on. They're generalists, they know how to do audio, they know how to do video, they know how to set lights, they know how to write. So that's a shift, trying to create a studio that can accommodate that pace and that expectation. The second would be process and thinking about iteration and you know, doubling down on figuring that stuff out. And the third would be distribution. So when I look at something like unscripted, my instinct is to be reductive about it and say, what is actually the nature of unscripted? And it's like, oh, is it real people saying things that you wouldn't be allowed to say? Or, you know, what exactly is at the very fundament? And then how can we, in the most reductive way, test what that is? And I think of the same thing in scripted as well, where you know, for me, and this is where literally Michael and I have been in a 1.5 year long argument about this, but I don't think that the fundamental root of scripted is the story. I think it is the moment and maybe the character. And so I think that there's ways of looking at scripted in a reductive way to test some of the premises about why people love characters so much, why they lose themselves in, and the gentleman to my right, I yield time for a rebuttal.
Like cranked him up, and like he's ready to go.
He's clenching his fist.
I saw some heavy sighs as well.
Well,
starting.
I'm gonna. When you get characters, you want to know what happens. They're contiguous ideas. They're not mutually exclusive. But there's a wonderful video they did. It was called Breakup Sex, okay? And the premise of Breakup Sex was a woman comes home in her 20s. She wants to celebrate the 2nd anniversary of the relationship with her boyfriend. She finds a note. She thinks the note is from the boyfriend saying, I love you. It's actually saying, I didn't have the courage to tell you this in person. I want to break up, okay? And now the guy's coming home. But she takes the note and she puts it, and she treats him as if she doesn't know that. And now the note, it's like Hitchcock said, if you want to create drama, put a gun on the table, okay? Well, the note is the metaphoric gun on the table. What's going to happen next? So all the points that are made emotionally about breakup sex are now made in the context, I want to know how it turns out. And how it turns out is she, of course, breaks up with him, and he's like, doesn't want to break up now because she sort of turns the tables. So that's the power of narrative.
Yeah, and so this is actually fundamentally the difference, I think, between creating content for the social ecosystem versus what I think is equally valuable, and maybe even more valuable in a dollar sense, which is this sort of narrative structure where you fall in love with worlds and characters. I think this is actually, I mean, we can just play that clip, because this is a good, we're going to play something that is non-narrative, but still, I think, hangs together.
He wants to win.
Can we play it?
I was going to say, so you get the last word.
He's like, oh, I'm going to show the clip last so that you can't argue back.
Can we play it?
Yeah, we have another clip to play.
That's not how you fold the towels.
It doesn't matter how you fold a towel.
It does matter how you fold a towel. If you want it to fit in the closet, you have to roll it. Oh my God, could you chew any louder?
This goes on here. It takes 2 seconds.
Well, then the next person who comes in will do it.
That's not the point. Hey, did you throw away my leftovers?
No.
I could have Oh, you bitch.
What did you call me?
Nothing. The toilet paper goes over. It's printed that way so you can see it.
No, the toilet paper goes under so that the cats don't get at it.
That makes no sense.
What do you want to get for dinner?
I don't really care.
Then just pick something.
You choose.
Told you.
Shut up. I don't see why I have to put the utensils face down.
Because when they're sticking up like that, if someone trips and falls, they're going to impale themselves and die.
That's literally the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I'm not playing this game where I list every single thing and you shoot it all down. I'm not doing this again.
Well, then I don't know what to tell you.
Oh my gosh, watch this. This is the best line.
Did you watch this without me?
You weren't home! Seriously, 6 more inches and it's in the sink.
Well, then put it in 6 more inches. I get it.
I get it.
Anything will be fine. It's
Fine.
food.
Fine. All right, we're gonna get pizza.
Anything but pizza.
What do you want to eat?
That is Bill Paxton.
It is Bill Pullman.
Bill Paxton was in Aliens. That is Bill Paxton. That is him. Game over, man. That is that man right there.
Why am I gonna put them away? I'm wearing them tomorrow morning.
I don't care if you're wearing them tomorrow morning. I don't want them just sitting by my side of the bed all night.
Why do you do this? You squeeze from the bottom. The next person doesn't have to squeeze then.
It's toothpaste. It's not like it's hard to squeeze it from a new area on the tube.
Why are we fighting about this?
Why are we fighting about this?
Why are we fighting about this? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have made you make the decision. That being said, I think your original call of pizza is fine. Just no pepperoni.
So,
What do you want on it then?
Anything other than pepperoni.
I'm going to murder you, and when the pizza guy gets here, he's gonna help me bury your body, and then we are gonna get married.
No, he won't, because he'll probably be like, yeah, I feel you, bro.
So that was supposed to be a 30-second clip. Thank you. But we ran out of time in the intervening thing. But I want to just make one point. The first is that you don't know their names. You don't know any backstory about them. There was no real narrative structure. I mean, maybe you could make a little bit of an argument of that. It's just a collection of moments. Now, the thing is that it's not optimized for the creation of universes and worlds, but rather what it does is it immediately makes you think of your significant other and the arguments that you get into, and it becomes this amazing vehicle to share on the social web. So what we saw is millions of people who shared that, and the share statements that they included were examples of the arguments that they get into with their significant other. So in a way, it's kind of like the content serves as a way of recontextualizing your relationships, and that's, I would just say that that's a way of testing out things like character and tone in a way that also works on the social web.
Rebuttal.
We ran out of time. I'm sorry, Michael, you cannot respond to that.
Rebuttal.
Well, now we can figure out how to turn that into a longer story about this couple. Or
yeah, I love that.
Or we can do some other story about couples and use these emotional moments to make the relationship seem both real and funny.
Perfect, and we agree, and we're out of time.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you very much.
We normally would have gone to a couple questions, but we're out of time. So
Great. This was
thanks.
a treat. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.